She looked right at me, smiled sweetly, and said, "Isn't it funny how life works? I used to babysit her. Now she's serving me champagne." People laughed. I stood there holding a tray of drinks, my name badge crooked, my pride in my throat. But I wasn't embarrassed. I was waiting, because I knew who was walking through that door. 3 hours earlier, I was in the kitchen of the Whitmore estate, tying my apron, my fingers stiff from the morning shift at the bakery. I hadn't even meant to take the evening gig, but the regular server called out sick, and my manager begged. Double pay. I needed the money. Rent was due in 4 days, and I wasn't about to ask my son for help, not after how far he'd come. I didn't know whose event it was until I saw the catering sheets. Private Gala, charity benefit, host Madeline Whitmore. The name hit me like cold water down my spine. Madeline Whitmore. We grew up in the same town, same high school. She was the girl with the lake house, and the housekeeper who made her bagged lunches just for fun. I was the girl with 2 jobs and a cracked phone screen. We weren't enemies. We were worse, best friends. At least until I got pregnant at 19. Then she ghosted me faster than my ex did. I didn't have time to think about it. Orders were barking from every corner of the kitchen. Tuna tartare needed plating. Someone dropped a dessert spoon. A wine bottle shattered near the dishwasher. I kept my head down. That's how I survived most rooms these days, by not taking up space. But I knew the minute I stepped into the main hall. There she was, Madeline, gown fitted like it was sewn onto her skin. Blonde waves curled, just enough to say, "I woke up like this." Laughter like champagne, sparkling and bitter. She was surrounded by a sea of donors, politicians, and society women with heels higher than their morals. I tried to melt into the wallpaper. No eye contact. Just move from table to table. Fill the glasses. Don't look up. But of course she saw me. Of course she couldn't help herself. She waved me over like I was part of the furniture. "Refill?" she asked, cocking her head. "Or do you only do that for the VIPs?" I said nothing, just nodded and poured. That's when she said it. Loud, clear, sharp enough to cut through the string quartet. "Isn't it funny? I used to babysit her. Now she's serving me champagne." Laughter, that brand of laughter that doesn't just mock, it erases. Like I was a story she outgrew. And still I didn't flinch. I was used to being the help. Madeline hadn't changed. She always needed someone beneath her to feel tall. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that this night, this gala was about to belong to someone else. Because outside, walking up the marble steps of the Whitmore estate, was my son. And he wasn't wearing a suit. He was wearing a robe. A black judicial robe with his name embroidered in gold. Noah Elias, 29 years old, the youngest state-appointed family court judge in our state's history, and tonight's surprise keynote speaker. Madeline didn't know that. Not yet, but she would. I remember when I first held Noah, pink and squalling, and so small I could cup his entire body against my chest. I was 19. The nurse told me I looked like I was playing dress-up in the delivery gown. I didn't cry, not even when they said his father left town for business, and never came back. I just nodded. Then I fed him, changed him, loved him. I worked through every holiday, every birthday. I cleaned hotel bathrooms at night and sorted packages at dawn. I said no to everything I wanted, so I could say yes to everything he needed. When Noah turned 5, he asked why I never came on the field trips. I lied and told him I didn't like buses. When he turned 10, he asked why his dad never called. I told him not everyone knows how to be brave. When he turned 18, he didn't ask for a party. He asked for a printer so he could print his college essays at home and save the library trip. I've never met someone so determined to carry light even when raised in shadow. He put himself through college, got into law school, interned at the juvenile court system. I remember the day he got the call. He didn't cheer. He didn't cry. He walked into the kitchen, kissed my forehead, and said, "You can quit the bakery if you want." When the event coordinator told us there'd be a surprise guest, I didn't think much of it. These events always pulled some author or washed-up celeb for a feel-good speech. But then I saw the black car pull into the estate driveway. I saw the back door open. I saw him step out. My son, my baby, now a man with the kind of gravity you feel before you even hear his voice. He wore his robe not with arrogance, but with quiet pride. His tie was crooked. His hair still had that stubborn cowlick, but his spine was straight, and his eyes locked on mine the minute he saw me. He smiled, not for the cameras, for me. When he entered the ballroom, the chatter dipped like someone had unplugged the room. The MC stammered through the introduction. "Please welcome our keynote speaker, a man who reminds us what's possible when you rise from challenge, Judge Noah Elias." There was polite applause, then stunned silence. I saw Madeline freeze. Her glass paused mid-sip. She looked at Noah, then at me, and I watched it land. Realization, recognition, regret. Noah took the mic, cleared his throat, looked at the crowd, and then looked at me. "You don't know her name," he said. "Most of you never asked. You called her sweetheart, or darling, or just waved your empty glass in her direction. But she has a name. She has a story. And tonight, I'm going to tell you part of it." The room froze. Forks stopped mid-cut. Even Madeline lowered her glass. I was raised by a woman who never had enough sleep, enough help, or enough money, but she always had enough love. And when the world turned its back, she turned the lights on in our one-bedroom apartment and made it a home. That woman is wearing an apron in the back of this room. My hands trembled. The tray felt weightless. I tried to steady my breathing. Noah didn't look away. He didn't let them look away either. So to the woman who mocked her tonight, thank you, because you reminded me what my mother really is. Not a servant, not a punchline, not someone to babysit. She's the reason I'm here. And you're the footnote in her story. I didn't cry, not yet, but I let the tray go, passed it to another server, and I walked slowly toward the front of the room. The sound of my own shoes clicking against the marble felt louder than the applause. It wasn't even real applause, not yet, just scattered claps, people unsure if they were allowed to cheer for something so raw. Noah extended his hand to me as I reached the front. Not for effect, not for the crowd, just for me. His palm was warm, steady, the same one that used to clutch my sleeve when crossing busy streets. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The room was already listening. Madeline, still seated at the head table, stared with the expression of someone watching their mask slide off in slow motion. The ones beside her leaned in, whispering, some filming, some pretending they weren't. Noah raised the mic again. "You know what she told me when I said I wanted to go into law?" She said, "If it helps one kid feel seen, do it." Not, "Will it make money?" Not, "Can you afford it?" Just, "Does it matter?" Someone near the back let out a soft, "Wow." A few heads turned toward Madeline now, not with admiration, but quiet curiosity. Judgment. Recognition. Noah's voice was calm, but it vibrated with something else. Something deeper. She worked the graveyard shift cleaning hospital floors, came home at 6 a.m. with bleach burns on her hands, and still helped me study for spelling tests. She packed lunches out of scraps and pride. And when I said I didn't need new shoes for graduation, she smiled like it didn't kill her inside. My throat tightened. I remembered that night. I'd taped the soles of my sneakers so he could have a new pair. He never knew. Until now, maybe he still didn't. So when you made your little joke, Noah said, now looking directly at Madeline, about how she used to be your babysitter, and now she's serving you champagne. I thought to myself, this is exactly why I took the bench. A pause. To remind people who forgot how to see the whole story. People began clapping, this time for real. A slow, rising wave that rolled through the room, building like a verdict being handed down. Not guilty. Never was. I turned to go. I'd said nothing, but somehow I felt like I'd said everything. No, stay, Noah said, touching my arm. I want you here. Someone near the stage offered me a chair. I hesitated. Old habits, being invisible is hard to unlearn. But Noah nodded. You've earned the front row, Mom. I sat. He continued speaking, but my mind wandered backward. I could hear his voice, but I was reliving all the nights he fell asleep on the couch doing homework while I cried in the bathroom, careful to keep the faucet running. All the times I chose groceries over utility bills. All the days I smiled through shame just to keep him believing we were okay. And all the times Madeline's name popped up in my mind when things were darkest. I used to think, what if she hadn't walked away? Would my life be different? Would Noah's? Now I knew. It wouldn't have been better. Just quieter and smaller and safer in all the wrong ways. When Noah finished his speech, people were already standing. Not everyone. Some stayed seated, uncomfortable with the truth echoing through their champagne bubbles. But enough stood. Enough clapped. Madeline didn't. Her lips pressed into a thin smile that didn't quite make it to her eyes. She looked like someone trying to find a joke in a courtroom. Someone handed Noah a glass of water. He declined it. Instead, he walked down the steps and came straight to me. I had to say it. He whispered, "You okay?" I nodded. I'm better than I've been in years. Madeline approached later. Of course she did. Her heels clicked louder than necessary. Her dress sparkled in a way that screamed, I still matter. She stopped in front of us, all poise and practiced grace. Judge Elias, she said, congratulations. I had no idea you were. Iris's son. I said nothing. Let the silence hang. Noah smiled with zero warmth. You knew. She blinked. Excuse me? You knew exactly who we were. You just didn't think we'd ever be in a room where it mattered. A flicker of realness crossed her face. Fear, maybe, or memory. I was young, she offered. Back then, we were kids. Iris finally spoke. I was a kid too, with a baby, and no friends. Madeline looked around. The crowd had thinned, but enough people lingered. Enough ears still listened. Well, she said, stiffening, let's not ruin a nice evening. Noah tilted his head. You already did that. But the good news? Truth makes better headlines than cruelty. Madeline left without another word. Back in the kitchen, one of the younger servers pulled me aside. Ms. Iris, she asked, tentative, was that really your son? I nodded. He's amazing, she said, wide-eyed. My brother's in juvie. If he had someone like your son back then, maybe he wouldn't be. I didn't know what to say, so I just hugged her. By the end of the night, the internet had already caught fire. Some guest had posted a blurry video of Noah's speech, captioned, "Wait until you hear what this judge said about his single mom while she was serving drinks." It had 18,000 likes before we even got home. I peeled off my shoes at the door. My arches ached. My knees throbbed. But inside, I felt 10 feet tall. Noah sat at the table, still in his robe, eating leftover cupcakes from the kitchen staff tray. He looked up at me with a grin. Do you think I was too much? I laughed. You've always been too much. That's what makes you mine. He stood, walked over, hugged me like he did when he was little, before the world made him fold in on himself. I didn't say everything I wanted to, he said. Not even close. I know, I whispered, but you said enough. The next morning, our mailbox was full, not with bills or junk, but emails, messages, DMs from people I hadn't spoken to in years. One read, Iris, I'm sorry I wasn't there when things got hard. I saw the video. I didn't know. You're incredible. Another said, I showed your son's speech to my daughter. She cried. She said, maybe we're not nobodies. Thank you. And one more. Thank you for raising him. He helped my son through court last year. We never knew his story. Now I get why he fought so hard. By evening, the video had passed 3.2 million views. But the most important message wasn't online. It was a note on our fridge. Noah had scribbled it on a Post-it, stuck it near the handle. You never dropped me, so I'm lifting you, one room at a time. I stared at it for a long time, because I realized something then. This wasn't just a moment. It was a shift. People saw me now, not because I demanded it, but because the person I'd raised stood in front of them and refused to let them look away. 3 days after the gala, my face showed up on a podcast thumbnail I didn't even know existed. Not my name, not my title, just the mom in the apron and the son who shut down the room. The episode had nearly 800,000 streams before I even found out it existed. Someone sent me a clip. The host was crying. She didn't even speak. And still, I felt her in my chest, like every woman who's ever been stepped over while she held a whole family together. I was folding laundry when it hit me. People weren't clapping for Noah alone. They were clapping for women like me, the invisible ones, the ones who disappear into back rooms and break rooms and third jobs just to keep their kids' heads above water. I sat down on the edge of my bed, cotton still warm in my lap, and let myself feel something I hadn't felt in years. Seen. But not everyone was celebrating. Madeline's name trended on Twitter for a full 36 hours, but not in the way she liked. Snippets from the event had made it into influencer videos, overlaid with phrases like, how not to give a wedding toast, the downfall of performative kindness, rich girl mocked her maid, then got publicly educated by a judge. They played that moment over and over, her voice, her laugh, the clinking of glasses, right before the room went cold and Noah's words landed like scripture. I didn't gloat. I didn't share the videos, but I watched one, just one. And when I did, I noticed something I hadn't caught the night of the gala. The way Madeline looked around after Noah spoke, like she was trying to find someone, anyone who'd still laugh with her. No one did. Even fake friends have limits. A week passed. Then, too, I went back to work, still picked up bakery shifts, still clipped coupons. Viral doesn't pay the rent. But something was different now. At the coffee shop, a girl behind the counter slipped a muffin into my bag and whispered, I saw the video. My mom's a single parent, too. You gave her hope. At the school drop-off zone, another mom nodded at me from across the parking lot. No words, just a look that said, I know what it took to still be standing. Noah didn't go back to work right away. He stayed a few extra days, said he needed the pause. We sat at the kitchen table each morning like we used to, him with his laptop, me with the classifieds, even though neither of us needed them anymore. One afternoon, I found him staring at the old photo wall in the hallway. Half the frames were crooked. The baby photo of him had a corner bent from the time he'd accidentally knocked it over while chasing a Nerf dart. He pointed to one of the photos, the only one with both of us in it. I was 23, in my apron, flour dust on my shirt, and he was 5, standing on a chair next to me, pretending to bake. I remember this day, he said. You'd worked 12 hours and still let me ruin your kitchen. I smiled. I didn't let you. I needed the mess to feel alive. Madeline reached out that Friday. A text, a number I didn't recognize. Can we talk? Just us. One coffee. No drama. I stared at it for 10 minutes before locking my phone. I didn't respond, because if someone waits until the spotlight's off them to ask for forgiveness, they're not seeking peace. They're seeking control. But the universe has its own timing, because fate, irony, or whatever name you want to give it, brought her to me anyway. 2 weeks later, I was invited to speak at a small community event. They wanted me to open for Noah. His team insisted it'd mean more coming from both of us. I nearly said no, but Lila, the high school girl who helped in the catering kitchen that night, called me her role model. She begged me to go. So I did. The venue was smaller than the Whitmore estate. No chandeliers, just folding chairs, a podium, and stale coffee in the back. I stood there, hands trembling slightly, reading from a few scribbled notes I barely glanced at. I spoke about motherhood, about working 3 jobs, about choosing survival over shame. I ended with this. The people who made you feel small don't get to define you. The ones who left, they don't own your ending. And the ones who watched you drown and did nothing, they never get to claim they kept you afloat. People stood, applauded. Noah took the mic next, beamed like he was 5 again, showing me a gold star sticker. And then I saw her, back row, Madeline. She was dressed down, sunglasses still on indoors, probably hoping I hadn't seen her. But I had. After the event, as the crowd filtered out, she approached me slowly. No cameras this time. No gala. No glitter. I just wanted to say. She stopped. Her voice cracked. I was a coward. I waited. Silence has power when you've earned it. I left because I didn't know how to be there, she said. For you, for your baby, for what that meant. I thought it would pass. I thought I could just wait it out. And then I didn't know how to come back. I nodded once. Iris, I don't expect forgiveness. But I needed to tell you that. Not because I want redemption, but because you deserved more than my silence. She looked smaller somehow, not physically, but spiritually, like the weight she'd been holding had finally made her kneel. I used to be so proud, she added, of being the girl on the stage, the one with the speeches, the gowns, the spotlights. But that night, when your son spoke, I realized I've spent my whole life building a stage. And you built a legacy. I didn't forgive her, not fully, but I saw her, and I saw her trying. Sometimes the deepest grace isn't saying I forgive you. It's saying you don't get to live in my mind rent-free anymore. That night, Noah and I sat on the back porch, the air still warm from the day. He leaned his head on my shoulder. I think I want to start something, he said, a program for court-involved kids. Something that helps the mothers too. Maybe call it the second seat. What's the name mean? I asked. It means the person who raised you deserves a seat beside you, not behind. He looked at me then. Really looked. You think people are going to say it's just a PR move? He asked. Some might, I said. But those people don't know you, and they damn sure don't know me. He laughed. True. That was the first night I didn't set an alarm for work. Not because I didn't need the hours, but because I didn't need the armor anymore. The world had already heard my name, and this time it stayed in the room. The day I walked into that courthouse beside Noah, I didn't recognize myself. Not because of what I was wearing, not because my badge read program director instead of server number 18, but because for the first time in my life, I wasn't holding my breath. I wasn't waiting for the floor to fall out. I wasn't shrinking. I wasn't hoping someone would finally see me. I was already seen. The lobby was buzzing with kids, mothers holding paperwork, grandparents pacing. A teenage boy was slumped against the wall, pretending not to be scared. I knew that fear. I'd lived it in 100 different forms. When Noah introduced me to the judge, the man extended his hand and said, "You must be the one who raised him. The legend." I almost laughed. A legend? Me. The girl who once washed her work socks in a gas station sink because our apartment had no running water. Our nonprofit had only been running a month, but we already had a waiting list. The second seat, Noah's idea, my heartbeat, a community program offering legal support, therapy, housing aid, and parenting workshops to families navigating the juvenile system. But more than that, it was a safe place, a space where no one whispered broken, where moms weren't treated like burdens, where every child knew they were not the sum of someone else's mistake. And yet, as surreal as it felt to sit in that courtroom beside my son, nothing prepared me for what happened next. Because just before the session began, a young woman entered quietly through the side door. She had tired eyes and one hand on a stroller. She looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her papers were stuffed in a plastic bag. Her shoulders were curled in like she was expecting judgment. I didn't need her backstory. I was her backstory. As she took a seat in the back row, Noah glanced at me. I nodded. He stood up, robe flowing like memory, and walked over. "Ma'am," he said gently, "do you have someone representing you today?" She looked startled. "No, sir. I couldn't." He turned and motioned for me. "Iris Elias," I said, extending my hand. "Director of the second seat. If you'll let us, we'd like to walk with you through this." Her eyes filled, not because someone was solving everything, but because someone finally stayed. Back home that night, I was washing strawberries in the sink when Noah wandered into the kitchen, holding a padded envelope. "What's that?" I asked. He smiled, a little shy. "Something from the State Bar." I dried my hands and opened it. Inside was a certificate, not addressed to him, to me, in recognition of extraordinary contribution to youth advocacy and family justice through direct impact, lived experience, and legacy. At the bottom, presented to Iris Elias. My hand shook. I hadn't cried when he graduated. I didn't cry when he passed the bar. I didn't even cry when he called me on stage that night. But I cried now because this wasn't someone else's story. This was mine. And finally, it had my name on it. The funny thing is, once people start seeing you, it gets harder to disappear. I'd lived so much of my life trying not to take up space. Now people kept asking me to fill it. A local news station came by to do a segment. I told them no at first. Then I remembered the girl with the stroller, the coffee shop cashier, the server at the Gala who'd said, "You gave her hope." So I said yes. The segment aired on a Wednesday night. A 10-minute feature called "The Woman in the Apron Who Raised a Judge." It opened with me pouring water into glasses at the Gala and ended with me sitting beside a child and her mother in court, helping them avoid eviction. By Thursday morning, I had 437 emails. By Sunday, we had donors. By Monday, we had space to open a second location. And somewhere in all of that, the inboxes, the phone calls, the podcast invites, I got a letter. A handwritten letter. No name on the outside. But I recognized the handwriting. Madeline. I didn't open it right away. I let it sit on my desk for a week. Then one night, when the world was quiet, I read it. I don't expect you to read this, but I wanted to say what I didn't know how to say back then. You made a life out of wreckage. You raised someone who doesn't just make change. He makes space for people like me to learn. I don't expect forgiveness, but I do offer gratitude for showing me what it looks like when strength is quiet and steady and wears an apron. You were never the help. You were the hero. I didn't cry, not because it didn't matter, but because I had already healed. Months passed. Seasons changed. Noah moved out again, this time to a quiet home in a nearby neighborhood. But he still came by every Sunday morning. We made pancakes, watched the news, argued over syrup to butter ratios like it was a constitutional debate. And one day, out of nowhere, he said, "Mom, you know how they say behind every strong man is a strong woman?" Yeah. He smiled. "I don't think that's right. You weren't behind me. You were in front, clearing the path. I still work sometimes. Not because I have to, but because I want to. There's something sacred in making something with your hands, bread, balance sheets, better futures. I do all three now. And sometimes I get emails from girls I'll never meet. Teen moms, dropouts, women on the edge of quitting. They write things like, 'I thought I was alone. You made me feel seen. If you can do it, maybe I can too.' And every time I think back to that night, the ballroom, the laughter, the look on Madeline's face when Truth walked in wearing a robe. I think about the sound of silence being shattered, not by a scream, but by a son who saw his mother standing in the shadows and said, 'Not anymore. The stories people try to write about you are never as powerful as the one you write for yourself. And this is mine. Not the girl who got left, not the woman who served, not even the mother who stayed, but the one who built something out of nothing and taught a child that love isn't loud, it's consistent. It shows up when others don't. It raises men who speak truth, and it writes endings no one saw coming. So here's what I learned. You don't need permission to matter. You don't need the spotlight to have impact. And you sure as hell don't need to be invited into someone else's story. When you're already writing your own,